Alrighty, welcome back everyone. It is Laughin' Games here. I'm back with another StarCraft 2 1 versus 1 cast, and today we've got something I'm very excited for, as it's going to be an incredible best of 5 between none other than Liquid Clem, the best Terran player in the world right now, I think it's safe to say. And he's going to be taking on a very good Korean Zerg player, a player who's really been on the up and up. It's SHIN, the StarCraft 2 player, formerly known as Ragnarok, although he's been SHIN for years and years now. And yeah, I think it's going to be a great TvZ. These two should be reasonably well matched. I'd say they're the same caliber of players, although Clem is an absolute monster, so it may be a bit difficult for SHIN to overcome that, but that's the beauty of these series. And so, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, click that like button for what should be an awesome best of 5 between these two. Leave a comment down below. You could say more more clams if you want to see more Clem games, more 1v1s, more best of 5s. Whatever you comment down below, it does help with the YouTube algorithm. And as doing these best of 5s does take a long time, that is appreciated. And so, yeah, also subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This is a newer YouTube channel out there, and I mean, I've definitely been enjoying having the freedom to cast more variety of StarCraft 2 on it. So, yeah, click that bell icon as well if you haven't already, as I do make announcements and stuff as well. So we've got an SCV scout for Clem, a very, very wise decision, knowing his opponent SHIN, who is notoriously aggressive. And so Clem is sending in this little SCV. It's going to come on into scout. Now, SHIN knows that there's an SCV scout. Clem comes on in. He sees the hatchery timing. And then he's just going to go, okay, I better make a second Marine or something like that, because he knows that Lings could be out on the map. But SHIN, upon seeing that Clem had SCV scouted oh so wisely, he immediately just kept the Lings at home. There was no point sending them out on the map after that. And so it's just a nice little meta game between these players. And the first, I guess the first round of that meta game does go to Clem, because not all Terrans scout in TvZ. In fact, it's somewhat rare. Whereas Clem, he decided to do it this match. He's got that Reaper on the way, moving out on the map. Gonna give him further scouting to see if there's a Roach Warren or something crazy like that. And then he actually just goes for a third command center. This is one of the things that really defines when a player is the best in the world, or the best of their race, or just looking good. That is how often they're willing to be greedy in StarCraft 2. You may say, well, this guy sometimes wins with pushes all the time and that kind of thing, and he's really good at micro and stuff, but no, it really speaks to confidence, and it takes a certain caliber of player to go for something like a third command center build that Clem's going for so frequently, because worse players will fall. Worse players will fall to aggression when they're so greedy, but they're also not just as confident as themselves. Like, you have to be confident to say, hey, I'm going to go for this every game, like a third CC. Not saying that Clem will. He might mix in some cheeses in later matches, but to start the series off like this, I really love it. And it speaks volumes, because in a lot of the games we do cast of Clem, he is going for greedy plays like this. Now, the Reaper goes into the main base. He's keeping tabs on his opponent. A few Speedlings do pop out. That's going to chase the Reaper away. Although Clem is being as much of a nuisance as possible, the Reaper does manage to get out. SHIN missing the Lings round. We also do have Hellions poking SHIN a little bit. But all in all, a good start for Clem. Nothing too significant has happened yet. However, he is setting himself up for success later in this match. Reaper and Hellions testing the waters. Clem's going for the 3cc Banshee play. Now, SHIN does scout this, so he knows he doesn't have to worry about a bio tank timing in the next couple minutes. But seeing the third at this point in the game, it's like, well, what can you do about it? You can try and macro as hard as you can, but then you still got to defend against the Banshees and the Hellions. And let's see here. Now, the extra racks are going up for Clem. Bio, no surprise there. And let's see, there's that Spore Crawler going up in every base for Shin. Now that's very important, as you got to defend against the Banshees, and that's exactly what Shin's doing. The Spore Crawler timing was just about 100% perfect there for Shin. That really was incredible. The Spore finished up as soon as the Banshee got there, so Shin is playing at a very high level as well. Looks like he does have a drone transferring towards the fourth. It quickly nopes on out of there. He goes to build the fourth, but that's actually queued up off location. He's quickly having to adjust that. Does correct for it, but we do see how Clem's presence on the map with his Reapers and Hellions, how he knows how far he can poke forward to keep the Zerg uncomfortable, and now the Hellions and Reapers, they come back on in. This is 6 Hellions and a Reaper. It's quite a bit of damage. A Banshee comes on in too. Now the Lings of Shin do go for a surround on the Hellions. All the Queens are coming in. Shin wisely repositions the Spore to reinforce his Queens, dropping a Transfuse. Now they are eating lots of damage from the Banshees, but due to the Spores, they have vision on that. Shin is desperately trying to save this fourth hatchery, but Clem is determined to get the cancel, and he does. The Banshees are still present, so Queens have to go off creep to try and shoo them away. Clem is going for another cancel, and he gets it. Every nickel and dime he can take out of the pockets of Shin, he'll get. And yeah, just not just committing to the first cancel and knowing he can get it, but committing to the second one with the Banshees really was phenomenal. Just a little delay on his opponent. Meanwhile, the Terran has got the third base up. He really took all the momentum with that push. As I say that, though, Shin does come on in with a very nice Ling counterattack. Clem is actually out of position with his Hellions. I love to see that from Shin. He kills off 11 SCVs, and then he is going to lose quite a few of the Lings to the Hellions, but he gets out with another big chunk of them. He's got 1-1 on the way. Does he have a Baneling nest? The answer is yes. Does he have Baneling speed started? No, because he's waiting on the lair. And so Clem is now coming across the map with a siege tank with some Marines. Shin is going to be facing the pressure of Clem. Now, I think the sooner he can shut this down, the better. So he is feeling confident enough to take the fight. Shin has a lot of Lings. They're getting a nice surround. They force the tank to lift off. It costs him a lot of blood, though, to defend that. Clem saved the tank, which is oh so important. He's now pushing in towards the fourth base again, but these Banelings are not going to have speed, not for another minute at least. And so Shin's going to have a tough time defending this fourth base as Clem comes roaring out in this series. The tank does fall. Queens and Banelings are going to push the bio of Clem away as it doesn't have reinforcements with it. Clem, of course, is pumping out lots of reinforcements behind this, so there's going to be another wave relatively soon. That Shin did stay alive on 4 bases, though. Creep was pushed back, so he's got to spread that out. I wouldn't even mind seeing him break down these rocks. I mean, it's one of those things, either you're right leaving them or you're wrong leaving them. With him playing the Heavy Ling style, I think it would be better to leave them up. We do actually have Shin finding Clem's bio that he left unattended there for a second. And so he pushes that back, but Clem reacts quick enough. The Terran doesn't have combat shield done for his Marines yet. Meanwhile, Shin is 20 seconds away from Baneling speed, which will be very significant as far as defending this goes, but he may not have 20 seconds as Clem is just coming on in here, and Clem knows that every second matters in this situation. Look at this, Shin is desperately trying not to fight. Baneling speed is done in 5 seconds. The Lings are moving forward. Baneling speed is done, but most of the Banelings are gone, targeted down by the tanks of Clem. However, in comes a lot more, so Clem has to pull everything away. He's not one to waste resources, though, so these Banshees are still coming on in. The tank does perish. There's an Overseer for Shin, so the Banshees can be dealt with. Meanwhile, Lings and Banes will save the 5th base. It looks like there's just not that much bio left for Clem. As I say that, though, reinforcements are streaming across the map. Combat shield not being done yet for Clem has been a big factor in this match. I think it may have been a little bit later than it could have been. And look at that, it's still not done as these Lings engage on the Marines, taking a much better fight than if they had combat shields. So the Zerg player Shin is showing us that he can really match Clem. It's a bit of an uneasy situation, but he's doing a darn good job. We do have Lings and Banes moving on in, desperately trying to save this 5th hatchery. I think it's at the point that I'd love to see Shin, if he can afford it, not saying that he can easily afford to throw up an extra hatchery, but I'd love to see him throw up a hatchery to the right side or even further to the north, because you know Clem is trying to grab a base as hard as he can. Shin's having to respond to a drop as Clem gets ready to move in for another push. He's got the strong combat shield on these Marines now. Only 1 tank for the Terran, though, so lacking AoE a little bit as Lings and Banes do roll on in, but beautiful tank firing by Clem. The Hydras actually miss micro a little bit and get too far forward. Clem is also lurking with the Medivacs in the back left of this base. As the Terran pushes on in, SHIN is desperately trying to hold on. Banelings are rolling forward. That tank is still present. It does go down this time, which is very important. Clem, though, is continuing to push into SHIN. It's 150 supply against 170. The Zerg does have 2-2 upgrades on the Lings, which is definitely going to help out, as Clem's 2-2 is still about 20 seconds away. Make that about 20 seconds away. One Baneling gets an okay connection, but there's simply so few Banelings left for SHIN. He's frantically trying to fight. There's a few more that finished up, but a Widowmine goes off. Beautiful splits by SHIN to chase the bio a little bit further back, but Clem is able to respond to that. The drop in the main base does get shut down, so SHIN can now fully divert his attention to defending the front lines. Man, oh man, though, this is an amazing series here today, as SHIN, he's transfusing, injecting the hatchery at the same time. He's got a good Hydra backbone in his army. 16 Hydras is no small amount, as long as he's got a few Banelings to support, but it is quite literally just a few Banelings. SHIN is setting up a nice surround, though, as he comes on in. Many of the Marines are loaded up inside the Medivac of Clem, but he's pushing forward. There's just not enough to buffer for SHIN, as Clem takes game number 1. A hard-fought match, a razor-thin margin the Terran pushed on in. But, yeah, what a great match that was. Well done to the two players, but Clem takes the lead. We're just going to load right on into the next match. It is a best of 5. I'm 99% sure. I mean, there's 5 map folders. It's in a spoiler-free format, thankfully, very much though. But at the same time, I'm like, is it really a best of 5? Am I 100% sure on this? I don't want to go check a bracket or anything though, because I don't want to see spoilers. But yeah, big thanks to OSC. This is from the OSC World Championship, one of the longest running StarCraft 2 tournaments at this point. They've done their yearly circuit, which is immense. They've done their yearly World Championship, which has been going for so long. It is a absolutely massive tournament. It's got like, it must have like 48 or 64 players or something in it, which is one of the largest tournaments to date. And so we get lots of awesome games because many of the top players are in it. And so yeah, let's see how this one goes, as we've got SHIN getting out a hatchery on the low ground, as Clem gets up a barracks on the way. So a bit of a different build already, as SHIN doesn't go for the early pool. Probably wisely. You need every economic advantage you can get from... Look at the rocks on this map. Like, they are so overly textured, it seems. I don't know what it is, but these are some, like, HD rocks right here. Compared to some of the other boring rocks we get, that's right, I'm throwing shade at rocks. Like, look at this rock. This rock does not have anything on these rocks. That's for sure. Like, look at this. Boring. Cool. And look at that, another cool rock. I don't know if I've ever seen this rock texture before, but Romanticide, maybe looking very romantic with all of its pink flowers and whatnot. And fancy rocks. Anyway, SHIN going for that hatchery at the natural. Queen's on the way, Ling's on the way. Clem, we'll see if he goes for a quick third command center or if he changes up his playstyle in this series. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Clem go for fast third CC into push every single game, and whether there was anything SHIN could do against it. SHIN is a player who will try and get aggressive, but in today's meta, it does seem even difficult for SHIN to be able to pull something like that off, as Clem is just so darn good. It's really hard to catch him out. He's like Serral when Serral was at his absolute peak. Not saying that Serral's not at his peak, but Clem has just sort of climbed to his level, and when a player is playing at their best, as I said before, they're confident in their macro, and that's exactly what we're seeing, as Clem does commit to the third CC as early as possible to get that lead. And it just gives you such an advantage because you're being greedier than your opponent. And it's like, what can SHIN do against that? He can macro up as hard as he can and try and counter it, which really is the only option. But the problem is Clem is so darn good at being aggressive. And so it's a fine line to walk to try and match your opponent. Takes so much practice. You really got to be on point. Now SHIN, he's got a pretty good idea of what to do. Get out as many drones as possible, set up a counterattack, but then also scout against Clem and be ready for the aggression when it comes. And we saw that. He's got things pretty finely tuned, as in the previous match. He had that Spore Crawler come up right as the Banshee hit. He wasn't wasting any time or resources building that Spore early. Now, there was just a ever so slight supply block by SHIN. I'm not sure if there's something he could have done to prevent that, but that's very nitpicky, me pointing that out. But now he's playing against Clem, so you gotta be nitpicky if he's gonna beat this guy. And SHIN is probably one of the few players that I could actually see beating Clem in a best of 5. Raw, maybe consistently, or at least not being afraid to macro up. Like, many Zergs are just afraid to macro up against Clem, and it's like, well, I guess I'll die. Now, SHIN is going for a surround with Lings, getting on top of the 2 Hellions of Clem as the Terran pushes on in. He's going to lose those 2 Hellions and the Reaper for 10 Lings. Not a bad trade for the Zerg. In fact, is that even resources lost? Yeah. Clem lost 50 more resources than SHIN in that, but it is quite nice for the Zerg because he knows, okay, no more Hellions to deal with, so I can drone up. Now, SHIN's Spidey senses should be tingling. He should be going, okay, guy, why aren't you making any more Hellions? And naturally, that just means the Terran's making earlier Marines, getting out early Stimpack. And look at this, 5 minutes into the game, Clem has got a 3rd CC done, so he's going to have beastly back row. But this is a very strong Terran build, as he's going to have double Medivac, Stim drop, 5 minutes, 5-minute 3rd. He might be a little vulnerable to a counterattack, but SHIN, I mean, he's only 5 minutes into the game too, so he's just trying to get up all his tech, and he's going to have to try and make a good defense happen. I do like the Spore Crawler positioning here, as now out goes Clem. Looks like that Overlord pulled back for SHIN, once again not wanting to waste anything. Now, does he have an idea that this 17 Marine drop or 15 Marine drop is coming his way? It seems that he's got his Lings out on the map, scouting this, but all of a sudden he's going to be like, oh man, there's Stim Marines. Clem steps on to the creep. There is Roaches producing for SHIN to try and defend this. He's actually burning ground, just retreating and focusing on a Ling counterattack, which is a very wise decision, as Clem doesn't have that much. So Lings, come on in. The depot is lowered, so these Lings will get on top of the Marines, but a tank does pop out with an SCV buffer. And it looks like both players will successfully defend, but I mean, SHIN actually gets a decent number of SCVs, 7 in total, disrupts mining at the 3rd a little bit for a rather minimal amount of Lings, and SHIN's timing was darn good. He had enough Roaches out, he had his creep spread out. Clem didn't have a scan perhaps ready to clean up the creep, or he just wanted to get damage. We also saw SHIN wisely not go for his 3rd base. That drone was out on the map ready to take the 4th, pardon me, not the 3rd. And so basically that means that SHIN, he didn't have to waste resources defending that. He just delayed it a little bit, which is a very wise decision. And Clem's like, oh, I'm not going to get anything done. And he really didn't. And as a result, that meant SHIN got a little bit ahead there by killing off some SCVs. His Ling counterattack did get work done in the previous match, though. He killed 11 in the previous game versus the 7 or 8 in this match. And so it just goes to show, you kill a few of Clem's SCVs, he's not going to back down. But that is quite a nice delay on the Terran. As, I mean, Clem's got to wait to get those extra SCVs out. His macro got a little bit disrupted. The Terran, however, is starting to push out. SHIN is playing a Roach style this time, though, so going to have a bit of a stronger backbone in his army, potentially until those Banelings get out. And once the Banelings get out, he can try and get value with the Ravagers. Good pullback on the Roaches for SHIN. It just goes to show these guys cannot ignore their units for a second, because they're always looking for advantages on each other. Clem was like, is he going to attack those rocks and let me pick off a Roach or two? The answer was no, because SHIN was reacting in time. As we do see, Clem realized that SHIN was trying to go up that ramp. He actually grabs 2 Ravagers. Incredibly well done. He's got 1-1, which really ups the damage on these Marines. Now, the Spore Crawler positioning was nice. As Clem bounces around this base, he's actually going to kill off that Spore, realizing it's a threat. A Queen almost gets a Medivac. SHIN's going to rebuild that Spore very wisely. It did its duty. There is a massive amount of Lings also inside the main base ready to respond to this. The Zerg is up to 77 drones on 4 bases. Meanwhile, we're getting up a 5th hatchery. And yeah, let's see here as Roaches and Ravagers come on in. Crossbow's getting blanketed down, but in the end it is pull out by Clem to keep these drops going. This is one of the things in which it's difficult for Zerg to deal with these medivacs, at least until they have Hydras out. I'd say Mutas, but Mutas are they're more rare in the meta these days, and it's been that way basically since Legacy of the Void came out. However, Vipers will be an option to punish that. I'd say Vipers and Hydras, but it's just going to be Vipers as SHIN commits to this very ground-heavy style. He's getting out an Ultralisk Cavern, which does take a long time to complete and produce the first Ultralisk, but he's on the right path. He hasn't really taken any damage. His creep spread is phenomenal, as it's even spreading out away from that 5th base, which is very important because Clem is going to be coming in here. A clutch Overlord also sees the Terran army push out a little bit. SHIN just really needs to pay attention to where Clem is right now. We have a Spine Crawler building at the 3rd base, which is wild, just something to absorb a little bit of damage if Clem comes in, and Clem is coming in. Banelings and Lings are going to chase this drop away once again. SHIN, though, then has to defend towards the north, as this is the bulk of the force for the Terran. Look at this. 8 siege tanks for the Terran. What does SHIN have to deal with that? 2 Vipers that are not in position, not juiced up yet. I mean, they're consuming that hatchery so they can get up their energy, but it takes a bit of time. Now they're crossing the map. We do have the 5th taking a lot of heat already. Banelings can move forward, but they will eat siege tank shots. That's the power of the siege tank, and I think SHIN may just need to abandon this base, and it looks like he is. He may fight last second to save it, and he's actually going to try. Blinding Clouds go down to disable a few of the tanks. However, Clem had a beautiful split, so these Banelings are just rolling forward. SHIN is hoping he's got enough. Clem is targeting them all down. The tanks will be picked up during this, though, and there's still quite a few Lings. They've got +2 armor, as the Ravagers and Roaches of SHIN do repel Clem. We do have a portion of this army still here. SHIN even microing that, so the Zerg is really on point. Lings are getting a surround on a lot of this Terran army. There isn't enough medivacs to evacuate, so that's very high-value siege tanks going down, and SHIN is just going to keep pushing on in. The Terran is in a little bit of trouble, and if SHIN can go for a kill right now, that would be absolutely massive for him in this series. Nothing's a given with Clem, though, as the bio that was out in the medivacs is still trying to make a play. 17 SCVs have fallen, but SHIN doesn't have that many reinforcements. He's also got to deal with this drop, so this is real nice for Clem, but as we see, even Clem having a difficult time microing that drop when there's units in his 3rd. Lings pushing into his natural. The Terran has lost 26 SCVs. Vipers come back, drop parasitic bombs onto those medivacs, and so that's going to end that drop, and that actually puts SHIN in quite a nice position. 161 Zerg supply against 124 Terran. There's a couple Ultras that sort of meander forward. Now, I think Clem seeing that might not be the happiest in the world, because if he takes stock, he's only got Marines and a couple tanks. He's producing some Marauders now, but these Ultras, they're going to have chitinous plating in just a moment. That's an extra 2 armor for them, which is absolutely massive, bringing them up to a total of 6, and that is not easy for Marines to deal with. So SHIN only has a few Ultras pushing forward, yet he is still doing work. Denying the mining at the 3rd base alone is huge. He is going to lose these Ultras for actually not that much, but look how much shooting it takes to kill just one of them. That chitinous plating upgrade is huge. There's 2 more Ultras out for SHIN. Clem is going to have to work overtime producing these Marauders, and he is doing that. He fires up +3 attack, knowing he needs as much firepower as possible to kill these off. Now, SHIN losing 2 definitely does hurt, and he did just lose another base, which is, well, his first base in this match, which is quite huge. It was injured, but then Clem, a very wise player, comes on in, and picking that off is ginormous for the Terran to give himself a little bit more momentum. The Zerg is looking to move forward, though not giving Clem any time in this match. Blinding Cloud hits the planetary, hits the tank, so the PF will not be defending itself. If SHIN can just pick that off, it would be big, and it goes down mainly to Banelings now. The Zerg did trade out a lot of his army to make this happen, and so I think after getting this damage done, including a Ling run by at the 3rd, SHIN really just needs to play for time, because now Clem lost a base, and he's going to be getting pressured hard. Vipers are flying around, more Lings are being produced, many more Lings being produced. They do have adrenal glands, +3 armor, and SHIN, he is just trying to run away. He's doing exactly what he needs to, because with Clem on 3 bases, he is in a commanding position on 4, rebuilding that 5th base. The Terran is also getting harassed by 2 Ultras. It takes more than a few Marines to defend that. So SHIN committing some of his precious units to the offense, but he figures he can make this work. Parasitic Bomb going down on one of the Medivacs. Good split off by Clem, though. There's also no Infestors, so nothing to prevent Clem from really kiting off the creep with this force right now, and that's exactly what he's got to do. But, I mean, having to deal with the Ultraless counterattack is big, as that does pull Clem's attention away, and SHIN is actually able to get on top of the army, and he takes game number 2. So well done by the Zerg, showing us that you can beat Clem as a Zerg. Well done, SHIN. And now we're going to go ahead and get on into game number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching up until this point, go ahead, click that like button if you haven't already, as, I mean, yeah, this is a best of 5 cast, and yeah, show me that you like these best of 5s. And I'll definitely cast more of them. There is many, many replays from this OSC World Championship. Here we are on ley lines as SHIN takes game number 2 and ties the series up. I honestly wasn't sure he'd be able to do that, but he did it. Well done to the Zerg. Okie dokie, Overlord flying across the map. As SHIN just goes for his hatchery. Ta-da. Clem does go for a low ground wall off as the Terran, so he could potentially be going for a Reaper opening right now, as he does go to build a second barrack. So Clem gonna be really testing SHIN with mass Reapers. I absolutely love this. And now let's see here. SHIN gonna be getting tested by the micro of Clem. Of course, this is a cross-server game, so it will have been played on the North American server, so both players will have a little bit of ping, but it works out both ways, as they're both gonna have some ping. So it is, in essence, a fair match. Now, it might make the micro a little bit more difficult, but in this day and age of StarCraft 2, players are very, very good at going for that Reaper micro, and just microing in general, even with a little bit of ping, because we have so many online cups these days that players are happy to play cross-server, that kind of thing. So we get some Koreans playing on EU, and some Europeans playing on the Korean server sometimes across the world, which is very cool. Now we do have Reapers on the way. For Clem, he's going to be going for the CC behind this, so he may only go for like 3 Reapers, something like that, as it is just a nice way to keep pressure on your opponent to try and gain momentum. Boldly, though, SHIN does go for a 3rd base. Despite scouting this, he says, I'm just going to make Lings and Queens to defend against your Reapers, Clem, and I'm not too scared. And so the micro battle begins as SHIN has to pull the Lings back to try and avoid losing them. You don't want to get bruised up too much before more Reapers show on up. And so he does try and pull back a Ling, but there's a bit of success for Clem as he gets a single Ling, which just goes to show how darn good StarCraft 2 players are in this day and age, where getting a Ling is considered a success to give you momentum in the match. KD8 charges going down. This 3rd hatchery is getting bullied by the Reapers, and Clem is going for 2 more Reapers behind this, getting up a 3rd CC, so just gonna really try and put pressure on SHIN. SHIN is like, okay, are you just gonna try and cancel my 3rd or what? Creep isn't spreading out towards the front, and Queens are not repositioning yet. So Clem may be able to get this 3rd base. SHIN should have seen the extra Reapers coming out. And this definitely won't have been the only time he's been in this series, but he does know that he's actually got to try and save this hatchery. He may regret having spread a creep tumor on the high ground before the low ground to try and save the space. He's only got slow Lings to try and shoo this army of Clem away. 2 Queens moving out. The 3rd hatchery is going up, but I think Clem may be able to get it. The Ling speed is 10 seconds away, but that is forever in StarCraft 2 pro gamer time. And look at this, a Queen trying to be a hero, pick off that injured Reaper. It does actually get it. The hatchery stays alive for now. Ling speed is done. Did Clem overextend with the Reapers as the Lings are trying to get on top of him? KD8 charges going down all over the place. He's trying to micro away the red Reaper to keep it alive to regen HP. Now SHIN has probably got to save up energy for a transfuse on this hatchery, because Clem will be back to try and get it. And so the positional jockeying really needs to continue on here, as, yeah, That hatch absolutely needs a transfuse. The queens are getting bullied by the Reapers once again as Shin paused his Ling production. Oh no, Shin gets hit with another supply block. That is so painful. Look at this Clem. He wants to get something done though with these Reapers, even if it's not the hatchery, maybe a drone or two, maybe some damage in the main. The 2 Lings that were out for Shin actually do come on in. Fortunately, he had those few units out in order to be able to pick one of those off, but Clem is getting damage done with these Reapers. 3 drones. Can he make it 4? Yes, he can. So really bringing the pain to Shin, not just as far as damage getting done. 4 drones is acceptable for the Zerg, I'd say. It's not catastrophic damage, but something like a supply block like that on Shin, like he built 5 Overlords at a time. He's 58 out of 106. And now that is showing signs that he may not have been keeping the coolest head in this game. He was panicking a little bit trying to deal with Clem's Reaper micro, but who can blame him? It just goes to show, though, that it's not easy to deal with that kind of push by Clem. Shin comes in with these Lings, and he's just going to go, oh, there's the stim on the way. I got to get ready for the next phase of aggression. As the killer Clem comes on in once more, 3rd CC into quick bio production behind this. He's already got 1-1 on the way. No Evos are started for Shin, so Clem is setting himself up for an absolutely monstrous mid-game here. Bio is unloading, gonna get a Medivac, or pardon me, an Overlord. Unloading from the Medivac, gonna get an Overlord. We do have Clem pushing on in. Lings are trying to respond to these Marines. They are gonna get a very, very nice surround to actually kill off about half of them. That was an okay trade for the Zerg. Now Shin is still in an incredibly uncomfortable position. No 4th base started. Meanwhile, Clem is landing his 3rd. No 1-1 started. No lair, no Baneling nest yet. It's going to be a very tough defense for the next few minutes for Shin. This hatchery has yet to be transfused as well, which is just, oh, it's just so brutal. But Shin knows he needs all the larvae he can get, so he's using his injects. He needs to spread as much creep, and if he has proper positioning, he will be able to get away with not transfusing that, but he's got to be so careful. He really needs to guard this base, and because Clem knows if he can get on top of this hatchery for a second, it will be his, and that would be game-ending damage if Shin lost that 3rd base. The Terran behind this does have much more bio producing, 1 tank at a time, slowly building up that count. Gonna have 1-1 done soon. A 2nd factory on the way for more tank production. Shin builds this 4th base on ley lines, however, that is eerily close towards the 3rd base of Clem, so he doesn't have to push far. He can siege tanks on the low ground of this when the time comes, and that is not going to be easy for Shin to defend. Then again, it's never easy to get a 4th base against Clem, so we'll see whether Shin can make some Zerg magic happen. He's got Roaches, he's got Ravagers, and maybe the Terran will overcommit a little bit. Maybe he can grab a Medivac. He does have to watch his main base, though, due to the presence of Medivacs, and look at that. Clem is so darn good at targeting down these Ravagers. It's 1-1 Marines, and Clem just realizes, I can fight this, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Corrosive Bile forcing the Marines to move a little bit, but it's still a great trade for the Terran. Shin loses so much. A Ling counterattack goes in towards that 3rd base. Only 2 SCVs have gone down, not even a 3rd. And so Shin just lost a lot of supply. That was 12 Roaches, 4 Ravagers for about 20 Marines. That is quite painful for the Zerg, but things will get better. Oh no, he actually just calls it. Shin says, there's no way I can win this game. He just looks at his situation, and he knows Clem is going to be coming in for another push. I'm not going to fault him for GGing out of that. I have literally no idea how he'd come back. No idea. And he didn't have infestors on the way. He was down on upgrades. And that gives Clem the 2-1 lead in this series. We're going to get into game number 4 and see if Shin is able to bring it back. In game number 2, he looked mighty darn good, but the Reaper opening of Clem in this match, in that previous match, definitely did him very well. And so here we have him. In the bottom left, it's Shin. And in the upper right, we have got Clem with the most adorable polar bear picture. Let's see here as SHIN probably just going to go for that hatchery once again. I think he may regret not moving out to try with the queens a little bit against the Reapers earlier, but it's such a tough position because, I mean, he didn't lose the third, so he did everything right in that sense, but he was just so far behind because of the macro. Like, that supply block, I think, is probably what set him up for failure in that game. Little things like that. Like, that was an economic blow. He might have had a few more units, that kind of thing. It's just razor-thin margins at the highest level of StarCraft 2, and that's what these guys are playing on. That's why the games are so darn exciting. Now, we do have SHIN sending this Overlord across the map. And then Clem got that Rax on the way. An SCV scout from Clem once more, not taking any chances in this series. I absolutely love it, as, I mean, why risk it? An SCV scout costs you very little. Clem has shown that a fast third command center is how he's going to win his games 99% of the time. It seems, anyway. Because he knows once he gets to that position, he'll be in a very good spot. I do kind of wonder if maybe this dominance is tied to the price changes a little bit. Queens being a little bit more expensive means, well, you get maybe, say, if one less queen is Zerg, which definitely hurts the defense. In comes the Reaper for SHIN. For Clem, pardon me, as the queen tries to get shots off and does, and then we'll be able to bully this Reaper away. No third base up for SHIN just yet, as he sits on 2 bases, and then sends out that drone to take the third. As he sees the Reaper to the south, he goes north, and that Reaper will move in for Clem to confirm that hatchery. I expect we will be seeing that third command center go up for the Terran. I get a feeling it's going to be a Banshee play once more, as, I mean, he's got the starport already. No second rack, so it will be a Banshee play, I think, from Clem. Probably the third command center getting up behind that at some point. Meanwhile, SHIN, though, going to be unharassed for a little bit. He'll just have to deal with the Hellions and the Reaper. Once they do start to get out on the map, grenade gets tossed down by Clem as he actually goes for a dive, but beautiful queen wall. Apparently I've lost the ability to speak as Lings try and chase down those Hellions. Unfortunately, he didn't get one of those Hellions, which can be repaired. SHIN is trying to micro his Lings as well as he can. He just about gets it. Clem is probably going to want to send those home to be repaired, but beautiful defense by SHIN. Like, that queen positioning, like, the Reaper snuck through, but the queens were literally body blocking and delaying the Hellions. And, yeah, let's see this. SCV gonna get to work repairing this Hellion. It will take quite a while. It's unfortunate for SHIN that he wasn't able to kill that off, because he will have to contend with them once again. Still, though, the third base for Clem has yet to go up. It's gonna be any minute now, I assume. We could potentially see a second and third racks before the third. It would be a little unconventional for Clem. But there's the third, going up in the wall. Spore Crawlers going on up, as SHIN has an Overlord that scouts the Banshee Cloak, so he knows what he's up against. That means he knows he needs to meet the timings to deal with said Banshee, and those spores are finishing up right before the Banshee gets there, so not a lot of wasted time. Queens are in position to push the Banshee away. Clem, not microing for a second, actually does take some damage on that Banshee. The Queens do still need to stay in position for SHIN. Looks like Creep Tumor goes down. Spore even gets a shot off on the Banshee. That's quite nice. Hellions are a threat, but man, oh man, was that SHIN just making 9 Overlords there? The supply blocks of SHIN. He is just so paranoid of getting supply blocked, or when he does get supply blocked, he overreacts a little bit. He wants to have that supply cap up, but I think you could be a little bit more efficient with that. Like, I mean, he's up 50 supply right now, which, yes, in a minute, Zerg will use up all that supply, but if you alternate drones and units and then overlords, while it's a lot more work to macro up, and it's definitely not easy, it is the type of little thing you got to be doing, I think, to overcome the economic prowess of Clem when he just hits his 3rd CC. Looks like the Zerg does want to move out to take this 3rd base, so he's going to shoo the Hellions away. Clem is actually going to let that get up, as the Queens do waddle off of creep to push away the Hellions. Meanwhile, Shin is going for a bit of a Ling counterattack. Clem hasn't secured his 3rd, though, so that's going to be vulnerable. Looks like a couple Banshees do actually grab a transferring drone, as the Queens are, of course, trying to keep the Hellions away on the 4th. Lings are maybe looking for a surround on the Hellions. Shin is going to run past the Hellions, but not really find them. He wasn't paying attention. So Clem actually got the shots off there, which is good for the Terran, getting some free Lings. Queens are repositioning, which is nice for Shin, having them in the correct position, spreading out that creep as much as possible. Prevent, which is going to be his defensive terrain once Clem does move out, and Clem is starting to push on out. These Marines, they've got 1-1 a ways away still, though. Combat shield a ways away as well. So Clem is just going to be going with these stimmed Marines. Shin does go for a big Ling counterattack, hitting the 3rd base. Banshees are in the skies, but the Lings can kind of ignore them, and Clem actually pulls the SCVs back instead of running them all the way. He just tucks them into the corner to buy as much time. Shin, though, gets 11 SCVs. Now he's just got to defend this on the front. Baneling speed is done in 4 seconds, so Clem's going to try and grab this 4th base. He does have a siege tank on the low ground. Shin drops Transfuse in the hatch to buy time. The rest of those Lings are a ways away to come from behind and save this. The Hellions are present for Clem, though, in order to help buffer against these Lings. The Marines, they don't have combat shield. They do eat a Baneling connection or two, and so Clem's push does get cleaned up. So very successful counterattack, very successful defense from Shin. Looks like Hydras are now starting to be produced for the Zerg as he's getting pushed away. Clem sees a few more Banelings and will take anything he can get at this point. But look at this. Shin is so darn good at these counterattacks. He does send in the Lings. He's going to find a transferring SCV or two. However, the 2 Banshees are still there. Maybe a Mule or something. No, Shin just runs on out of there. He would have had more success if he went to the natural probably, but I mean, Clem's got depots and choke points in production, so maybe not. I mean, it was only like, I don't know, 8-10 Lings for Shin, so he's going to make them into Banelings. Figure he can get some more damage done. Meanwhile, the Zerg does have 1-1 upgrades done, so it will be even upgrades. And look at this, Shin wasting no time rolling these Banelings in. That is not a complete wall for Clem, and he's actually going to catch the Terran off guard, completely gutting the mineral line of Clem, and that is going to put Shin in a phenomenal position to tie this series up, potentially. That is so huge for Clem. I mean, or for Shin, pardon me. Damage done to Clem like that is not something you can easily get all the time. We do have another Ling counterattack run into 6 Marines of Clem. He's like, wait, I can fight those, as Clem is busy microing on the front with his bio, but his numbers are just not what he wants them to be. It's 69 army supply against 74, but as far as economic potential goes, Shin has way higher. He's up to 80 SCVs against 80 drones against 47 SCVs. And, I mean, Clem, things aren't going to get any better for him. He doesn't have a 4th base on the way. He doesn't really have the confidence to build a 4th base in this situation as the Terran. At some point, you just got to say, all right, I got to push. And so Clem, he's got the same upgrades as Shin. Maybe he can make something happen. He's got 3 tanks out, the 2 Banshees as well. They could be big. Maybe get some Banelings, help the Terran get into a good position. As Clem is putting it all on this push, what do we have numbers-wise? 48 Marines against 32 Banelings, but there is 4 tanks to try and deal with this. Shin isn't really ready for this attack. He doesn't have a big surround setup or anything, and so the tanks are going to get set up quite nicely. Clem can maybe pre-split his Marines. He may actually just grab this 4th base, and Shin is going to wisely abandon it, saying, no, I've got potential here, and the potential is a massive counterattack hitting the 3rd of Clem. That is going to be completely gutted, and that's going to force Clem to potentially push on to creep, but he knows he can't do that. The Terran player does have a phenomenal amount of Lings back at home, thanks to his good macro and production, though, so many Marines are there to defend that. Pardon me if I called those Lings. He's got Marines to defend against the Lings. Clem wisely pulls back because many Terrans have been forced into positions where they're all in with counterattacks like these, and it's still an awful spot for Clem. But to rush in and get just swamped by banelings would not have been the answer for the Terran. I honestly wouldn't have minded like a siege tank left on the high ground for Clem to help defend this base, but then again, it would have killed his SCVs. Not like he's got many SCVs left. The Terran really is all in at this point in the match. He's got 2-2 done. The Zerg will have 2-2 done, though, and it's just going to come down to these siege tanks to try and take out those big balls of banelings. There's no Vipers out for the Zerg. The Hydras don't have any attack upgrades, so there is some things in Clem's favor. He's got a monstrous army, 150 supply, as he's only got 37 SCVs, sustaining himself off of mules. The Terran is all in with a push, 105 Marines. It's going to come down to the splits. Looks like SHIN is charging on in. Clem has so many Marines to try and split. He's got a very deep tank line, though, and he does absorb a lot of that Zerg force. However, quite a few of the tanks on the front line got cleaned out. That means he needs to shuffle the other ones forward. Army supply is in favor of Clem, though. What's the baneling count? 28 banelings left for SHIN. The tanks are moving forward, though, and now both sides are fighting with a smaller army. SHIN can reinforce quicker than Clem, though, and the tanks are getting shots off for the Terran. Clem boldly steps forward. He's like, okay, I'm going to get this hatchery. SHIN pulls everything away, realizing he can't attack into those two siege tanks. A confident decision by the Zerg to say, no, if I fight here, I'll lose the game, but I can play it out. He's gone for a Ling counterattack. Once again, Clem is onto him, though. Many Marines set up in the third base in order to defend that. The Terran, who took so much damage early on, is pushing on in. Marines are having to retreat off of creep. Tanks on the high ground are getting big shots up, but I think Clem may need to lift into his medivacs as he does not have the room to split, and so he does escape with many of those Marines. The tanks, of course, were killed off. Clem is producing more Marines. He's got +3 attack on the way, no +3 armor, so his Marines will still be susceptible to banelings. Meanwhile, SHIN is getting out range, which will improve his Hydras a little bit. He's only got 8 of them, so not the biggest difference, but every little bit helps in a situation like this. Meanwhile, Clem is going for a drop towards the third base of SHIN. It would seem he's setting up a surround. The Terran does have way more army supply than his opponent. It's hard to believe that SHIN had like 50+ banelings at some point in this game. A Ling counterattack goes on in for SHIN once more. Clem just says, nope, lift that off and drop mules as soon as I can. Basically, the Terran's drop is trying to get critical damage done to SHIN. 16 drones do die. Meanwhile, all these Marines are pushing in towards the fourth. SHIN cannot afford to lose his fourth. Transfuses are not fast enough. Vipers are vulnerable on the front. I think the only thing that can win this game for SHIN is a major miss micro by Clem at this point in the match. He's a 3-base Zerg, well, against a 3-base Terran, although the third has been floated for Clem, so SHIN may actually have a bit more of an income if we pull that up. It's not a pretty income advantage, but it is an income advantage. It is going to be greatly minimalized, though, once Clem does land this position. Look at this. He's got energy in the bank, so he'll be able to drop 4 mules. We do have Lings and Banelings trying to make a play on Clem's bio, but look at that. Medivacs being the MVP, getting the Terran forces out of there. Clem is still sharking about, able to micro 2 groups at once. He's so darn quick. We do have Lings coming in for a counterattack. However, Clem has got Marines in position. He knows that this third is so important. SHIN has found lots of damage there, but he might be tight pressed to find more. The Vipers are going to be huge for the Zerg, though, because Parasitic Bomb or Blinding Cloud. I'm guessing Blinding Cloud to just remove the tank shots to allow the Banelings to get on top. This would be huge. We do have Lings run in for SHIN, though. A bit of a miss micro costs him probably about 10 Lings when he cannot afford to give up any units. The Zerg does re-up, though, to go for a counterattack to hit this third base. That's going to force Clem's hand to probably try and push on in as the third gets gutted once more. That is so much damage done. Clem is knocked down to 24 SCVs. While he's done a pretty darn good job playing through this harassment, it is at some point insurmountable, and 24 SCVs is nothing for the Terran. Meanwhile, the Zerg is getting to a Lurker Den. Lurkers are darn good against a Terran with 100+ Marines. This is ridiculous, the Terran force. SHIN has done such a beautiful job preventing Clem from pinning him down. I mean, Clem would have loved nothing more to push into the natural, but the counterattacks, the Banelings, the further expansions for the Zerg have allowed him to just play this game out and gradually improve his position, it would seem, because now SHIN has 9 Lurkers building. It looked like he would have been toast. He was down like at least 40 supply, maybe 60 at some point in this game. Meanwhile, SHIN goes for a Ling counterattack, getting on top of the Terran reinforcements. Clem is not going to be mining at his third much longer, although he does have a lot of Marines there. Pardon me. He is actually able to keep his mining at that third. Clem is powered by mules right now. I'm surprised there's not like a sponsored by mules logo on his CC, as that is the only thing keeping his economy going right now. The income advantage is nullified when this third is mining because SHIN is only on 55 drones, just getting up a fourth base once again. He does have so many lurkers though. Seismic Spines is just about done. He's also going to have Carapace on the way. There is no adrenal glands for the Zerg, but I mean, adding in lurkers to this composition is huge for SHIN. It's going to force Clem to either make a very difficult decision to stim on in or just to use his tanks, but the tanks are going to get countered by the Vipers, and then just getting abducted into the lurkers is quite difficult. A few banelings roll forward. Clem is trying to push on to the other side of the map. He actually stimmed into the lurkers, and he did kill off 3 of them. He's now going to try and drop into the main on the high ground as he pushes the third of SHIN. This is such a close game, such an amazing series in TvZ. StarCraft 2 in 2025 is pretty darn awesome. Lurkers are burrowing once again, but in goes Clem, blinding Cloud to prevent those Marines from firing, but it is a successful stim in for Clem as he kills off a huge number of those lurkers. SHIN's army, his support for the lurkers was out of position. It costs him the third base, and meanwhile Clem is still dropping mules at this third periodically, still mining a little bit. If you're on a poor economy, you gotta make sure your opponent is on a poor economy, and Clem is doing a beautiful job of that. Still, though, SHIN does have a much superior income due to this fourth base. There's a Ling counterattack once again. It's non-stop. Clem is knocked down to 19 SCVs. He hasn't been building more. He's pretty much just been building Marines with a few tanks. 71 Marines, though, against 23 Banelings, 6 Lurkers. Is going to be a difficult fight for the Terran. However, he has knocked SHIN down to 3 bases. And so the Zerg will be oversaturated. Look at that, 30 drones out of 16 mining. That is way too many. The Zerg, though, has been improving his situation. Adaptive talents, allowing those lurkers to burrow much quicker, is massively important. And to actually move a little bit quicker as well. And that is just massive for the Zerg. We do have a few Marines in position for Clem, although they are on hold position to defend against these Lings. Another counterattack, and oh man, this is the mother of all counterattacks. Gonna force the hand of Clem as SHIN goes in for a ginormous game-winning counterattack as he cleans out the third, possibly for the last time. Clem's hand is forced. He's stimming on in. He's gonna try and kill the lurkers. He does have a very nice scan, a nice surround on those lurkers. The scan expires, so he has to scan again, and all of a sudden SHIN is just all in on the other side of the map. It's a base race scenario between Clem and SHIN. Man, oh man, what a game this is. A tank on the high ground is trying to take care of some of the Banelings. Clem has no production because he was so broke before his third got cleaned out, and now he's got nothing to fall back on. He's making literally 1 Marine. The Terran still has 6 siege tanks out, though. The Zerg has run a lot of his drones. SHIN has enough money to build a hatchery. He's going to throw that up right away. Not that he's going to have production if his Hydra Den goes down, if his spawning pool goes down. So SHIN is just playing, trying not to be eliminated at this point, and then maybe he can take the fight he needs against the army of Clem, but he's got no Banelings. He's only got Hydras. I think Clem may have eked this one out because he's not going to be eliminated as long as he can float a base and then take care of this hatchery. And look at this, these floating racks, they find the hatchery. That is huge for Clem. The spawning pool is still alive. He's going to want to kill that. Ensure no more unit production is a thing. The Zerg is running around, but SHIN is in trouble. I can't believe this series was this close. SHIN is going to type out. He knows Clem has got him. He knows he can't deal with the army, and so Clem is going to take game number 4 and win the series just like that. Beautifully, beautifully done by Clem. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this cast, hit that like button. Leave a comment down below saying if you want to see more Clem, more SHIN, that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, if you just enjoyed this match, though, subscribe to the channel if you're still watching. Leave a comment, leave a like. If you do want to support the channel, this is a new channel, so there's no YouTube membership program, but there is on my other channel. And yeah, thanks so much to everyone for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time. What a match.